Hey there, everybody. This is Graham here at therecordingrevolution.com. Got a basic video for you today on EQ basics. Honestly, EQ and compression are the two most important effects when it comes to mixing audio. Okay, so you need to know them and you want to continue to study and learn them. And so today we're going to talk about the EQ side of things. EQ stands for equalization. And basically, we're trying to equal out and mess around with and adjust the frequencies that we hear audio so that all these tracks play nicely together. Okay, so let's start with some music here. I've got a guitar solo section. All right, so it's a doubled lead guitar part going on. There's lots of other tracks behind it, but this is what I want to focus in on. You can take a listen to it by themselves. So now, when you're mixing, you want these tracks to sit well together. Ideally, you've recorded them well. You know, this guitar sounds great. You've tried to use correct mic placement and arrange things well, so you've got instruments that take care of the low end of things, like a bass guitar maybe and a kick drum, instruments that take care of a lot of the mid and high, like a lot of guitars, pianos. So they should sit well together in general. But EQ is going to help you in a recording sculpt them perfectly. It's sort of behind the scenes work. It's really where the magic of mixing comes into play, is the EQ and compression. So EQ is the big one here. Now, any DAW is going to have a solid EQ plugin. EQ3 from Digidesign is a great one. It comes free, and I use it all the time as my go-to EQ plug. And what you're going to see, this is their 7-band EQ. And what that means is there's just 7 points that they're going to let you adjust on one EQ plugin, whereas a 4-band, they'll only let you adjust 4 frequencies at any given time, or a 1-band. And as you can imagine, the 7-band takes up more processing power than a 1-band. But a lot of EQs are going to look something similar to this. You've got a graphical representation of it up here, and then you've got all the knobs and dials down here. Now, audio goes from left to right on this spectrum from, let's say 20 hertz is what they're showing us here. And hertz is how we're going to measure frequencies of audio. 20 being really low frequency, stuff you barely can hear, it so low. All the way up to 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz. And that's really, really high frequency stuff that probably only dogs are hearing or what have you. The idea is that you can graphically see and you can click and drag frequencies down to remove them or increase them. Now, what are you doing when you're removing or increasing frequencies? All you're doing is controlling the volume of different frequencies. So, this is the great thing about EQ. Someone says, oh, in the mix, the guitar is there, but I need to hear it more. Can you turn it up? Well, that may not be the issue. You could easily turn up the guitar, and then you'll hear it more, but then all the other frequencies will be turned up with it. So there might be low frequency in the guitar that you don't really need to hear. So an EQ will allow you to turn up, let's say, just the frequency that allows you to perceive the guitar in the mix better. Now, on most EQs, you can just click and drag up or down to cut or boost. But then these knobs basically dial in the same thing. Now, here's the important thing you need to understand. You need to understand Q, and then the frequency and the gain. The frequency and the gain are the most basic. You choose a frequency, like I want to hear more of that bite that I seem to find around 1,000 hertz or 1K. Well, you could make sure that that's typed in here, 1,000. You can see that's where the yellow one is. And then the gain, you just turn it up, turn it down, whatever you need to do. Okay? Q is basically how wide of a curve. Because if I crank this up plus 6 dB, so I've turned up 1 kilohertz, about 6 dB, I'm also turning up these frequencies around it. Q, the higher the Q, the steeper that curve is going to be, so it's going to be pretty much only that frequency. It's going to be very specific and precise. And the lower the number, or the wider the Q, the more rounded and subtle the boost or the cut is, but then it affects a lot more frequencies. So depending on how surgical you need to get, that's what a EQ does. All it does is adjust sort of that slope. Now, you notice most of these are what they would call a notch filter, meaning it just notches up, notches something down. At the end here, you have shelves, and so these can be notch as well, meaning I could click or drag up. But a shelf is exactly that. It just boosts that frequency that you lifted up and everything to the right, or in this case, everything to the left of it. So I can boost at 5K all the way up, or I could cut from 5K all the way down. On a vocal, a lot of times I'll just boost a shelf right around 4 or 5K all the way up, and so that breathiness will show up there. So all you've got on an EQ is mostly notch, some shelving, and then you just adjust which frequency do you want to turn up or turn down, and then how steep do you want that to be. The only other thing you're really going to see on an EQ is maybe a high pass or a low pass filter, which is just another band of EQ. But like I've talked about in other videos and I wrote about a few weeks ago, that a high pass filter can really clean up your mix quickly. I click in, so I'm engaging that band. I just start rolling the frequency. At what point do you want to start rolling off or just cutting all the frequency below it? And then this Q has only got basically a couple options: 6 dB, 12 dB, 18. So how steep do you want the roll off? And I'm just cutting everything off. So if I take a listen, so it sounds real thin because the guitar is just as loud as it was before, but now every part of the guitar that was 1K all the way down to the low end is removed. And so in essence, the cool thing about EQ is that it's only helpful in context of a mix. The idea is to just remove frequencies that are unnecessary. Cut them out a little bit, roll them off entirely, because if you can cut it out and the instrument or the vocal or whatever you're cutting still sounds normal in context of the mix, you are freeing up a lot of volume or headroom in your mix, which then allows your mix to open up. So the idea here on a guitar, let's say, is to roll off a lot of that low end to start out. So let's take a listen. So I'm rolling off, and you're still not even noticing that much of a difference, okay? What I'm going to do also is, let's take a listen. See, I'm cutting all that out because it doesn't have a whole lot of low end, so any low end that would be down there, you might as well cut all of that out, free up a ton of volume that could be some low frequency, low volume stuff hanging out. Cut it out. Now, same thing too is if there's just a frequency that's bugging you, you could make it a little more subtle if it was too gritty. It's real subtle, but I've cut out a lot of stuff. And then I'm just going to Option or Alt click and drag this over so that both guitars have the same EQ. We'll take a listen in the mix with or without the EQ, and you'll notice that it's really subtle. So in this case, the EQ, you don't even notice it happening in the background. And I'm only saying that to say that EQ can be very helpful to find, pinpoint, and reduce frequencies that are getting in the way that you don't necessarily need to hear. But all an EQ is just, again, a volume knob on specific frequencies. And it can be tailored to sculpt the sound you want. And it really just takes a lot of practice of figuring out what is helpful, what do different frequencies sound like, and where do you go from here. So start messing with it. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and make some better music with the tools that you got. All right? Hope this is helpful to you guys. Again, thanks for checking out these videos. This is Graham at therecordingrevolution.com. Hope you guys have an awesome day. Talk to you soon.